An artist's style can feel like their identity. It's our chosen medium for expressing ourselves. A lot of artists want one that's super unique to them. It's common for people to be sensitive to feedback on their style. And some of you need to be a lot less common with giving your feedback because, oh my god, can we go like 2 days without a child being bullied on TikTok for being a beginner? Your perfect style is something that's highly sought after and notoriously hard to discover. Odds are high that even the artists you look up to are still unsatisfied with their work. Not me though, I'm built different. That was like 80% a joke. I've just been very experimental lately, and I've found a process that I really enjoy that I do actually feel really good about. So I thought I would walk you guys through my current stylization process. And because Hoyoverse loves me, they've sponsored this video and asked us to draw some characters from their upcoming game, zenlesszonezero, which is like an urban fantasy ARPG. It's very cool, but we'll talk about the actual game more later. Being a Hoyo project, of course the designs are incredible. The Zenless cast have a pretty different vibe to them compared to their other games rosters, and I think I actually like these characters more. I picked out the ones I thought I would get the most out of drawing, and those ended up being Corin and Lycone from Victoria Housekeeping, and Coleda and Ben from Bellabog Industries. My goal is to draw a collage piece for each of them, but rather than jumping straight into those, I'm going to get familiar with how I want to draw the characters first. So let me show you all the prep work I did. Starting with Coleda and Corin, I began by redrawing official art of both of them and taking note of the aspects of their design that made them unique and what I personally would like to emphasize or exaggerate. Coleda in particular, I think is one of the coolest and most effective designs in the game. She has a lot of triangles in her silhouette, especially from her longer pigtails and big pants. She's got a lot of pointed edges, very spiky. You can tell pretty easily that she's involved in construction, but her design also implies a specialty or an interest in demolition. Especially with the cowlick she's got on the top of her head that looks like a little flame. I absolutely adore that. Between her design and her expression, she's clearly got a very explosive and brash personality, whereas Corin is like her polar opposite. They're even complementary colors. Corin's design has much more round shapes to it. Her bangs really envelope her face like she's hiding in them, and they cover her eyes and eyebrows to make her look more mysterious. Like she's harder to connect to, she's more guarded. She looks exhausted and like she would definitely prefer to be home right now. I feel like I have a great understanding of both of these characters just from what they look like alone. After those, I did more sketches exploring them on my own. For Coleda, I wanted to push the triangles, so I tried exaggerating the small of her waist and making her chest pointier. I also really wanted to make her eye look like its own little explosion, which I was able to do by indenting her eyelashes with the whites of her eye. I don't really know how to describe it, but this part. I also did some loose sketches of her full body to play around with her pants, but they didn't come out all that exciting. With Corin, it was all in the eyes, making them super hooded and slanted downwards, really going hard on making her look miserable. It's a very fun expression to capture. I tried to continue on with more sketches that showed a bit more of her outfit, but I wasn't loving my results. And the recent trick I've learned is that once I get frustrated with drawing digitally, it's time to swap to a sketchbook and spend some time doing quick sketches studying whatever it is I'm struggling with. In this case, it was incorporating what's interesting about their outfits into their poses, so I did a bunch of Pinterest studies that focused on precisely that. Like the folds we could get with Corin's skirt and apron if she lifted them up or spun around, and where to place Coleda's legs to get the most out of how massively oversized her pants are. After those, I moved on to thumbnail sketches to practice what I was learning on a smaller and more focused scale. And then a few pages of larger doodles, again trying to make use of all the work I just did so I could really commit it to my mental library. Really happy with how these pages turned out, and I felt much more comfortable with the idea of drawing both of them by the end, so it was time to move on to our big anthro boys. I started with redraw studies again for both of them, but with Lycone, I did more than I really needed to. He turned out to be the easiest character for me to draw. I was not struggling. He was really fun. Honestly, I just think he's hot. The whole stoic butler thing already makes him a character I'd be drawn to, but him wearing all those leather straps and heels just fucking destroyed me. Oh my god. I did less redraws of Ben, even though he would end up being the most challenging for me to get the hang of. He's pretty Dilfy, very bulky and sturdy and squarish. Just kind of a brick wall of a guy, you know? He's different from the other characters, though, in that his appearance deliberately contrasts his personality. He's this huge, scarred, intimidating beast, and then he opens his mouth and he's really friendly and polite. He likes doing math. He's just a guy. After both of their redraws, I did some animal studies. But I drew from some references of wolves with their mouths open because I simply wanted to. These ended up being very moot because lichen is too even-tempered for all this. But in doing these, I was able to observe that the structure of his muzzle is much more like that of a cat's. Even the nose. This is a kitty cat nose. With Ben, I of course did bear studies. This time I did headshots and some full body shots of bears standing up because Ben does feel like his anatomy is a good deal more animalistic than lichens. And bears are an animal I haven't really drawn before. I love the funny thing they do with their lips, I don't know what to call it. And because they're generally made to walk on all fours, when they stand up their bodies look very long and their limbs look very short. Little stumpy legs, so cute. When I did more exploration sketches in my own style, I breezed right through lichen. I felt confident. But Ben was making me nervous, so I quickly fled back to my sketchbook. He's got such a unique body type that I was struggling to think of what I could run to for a reference. So my first sketches were just seeing if I could draw him on my own, and my fears felt validated because I feel like all of these came out pretty bland. It was really hard to apply what I knew about good posing and character acting because I don't usually draw characters shaped like this. Trying to force him to work with the knowledge I already had was like trying to shove the square peg through the proverbial circle hole. Out of desperation, I grabbed my Spider-Verse art book to do some thumbnail studies of Kingpin concepts, and these changed everything. Kingpin doesn't have a lot of concept art in the book. There's this one section where they're testing out different proportions for him, and then this one where they test out a bunch of pose studies using the design they went with. I almost didn't even bother with the earlier drafts, but I'm so glad I did, because these all make the best use of whatever body they've got, and they really inspired me. I started thumbnails pushing poses that leaned into silhouettes that only someone with Ben's body type could make. And then I went back to doing studies of real bears to look for the same thing. What kind of silhouettes do bears make that only bears can? I went nuts with these. I drew the bear until I understood the bear. I drew their funny little lip things. I had the time of my life. The mindset that I adopted while doing these was so successful, and I was so proud of what I was doing. It made me want to redo every art study ever. Oh my god, I love drawing. I felt pumped. I felt ready for all the final illustrations, and I'm so glad I did all of that prep work beforehand because all 4 of the final pieces make me go, damn, I drew that. Could not be prouder with how they turned out, and we will get to those in just a minute. Because now that you've listened to me talk about how these guys look, don't forget to pre-register for zenlesszonezero so you can see them in action in the shiny new addition to Hoyoverse, alongside beloved games like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. ZZZ is an upcoming free-to-play ARPG in a post-apocalyptic, futuristic metropolitan setting. You face off against their enemies, the Ethereal. These guys are the reason this is a post-apocalypse setting, and they are not done yet. So you need to take on the role of the proxy and set out to recruit new members to your party in the ongoing war against the Ethereal before they wipe out humanity for good. Each character has their own unique fighting style, and you can build your team so that they all capitalize on each other's strengths. The characters are really the highlight for me. I mentioned before that I really like the designs in Zenless, but what stands out to me even more than that is how much personality there is in everything. Like, the game isn't out yet, so the roster is limited, but there's already so much variety. They all come from factions that have their own aesthetics and styles, and the way this game uses animation, the movement is super expressive. They use squash and stretch and smears like a 2D animation would. The cutscenes are so carefully posed and timed, it's a delight to watch. Zenlesszonezero is officially coming to you on these platforms on July 4th. Make sure to pre-register before then with my link in the description to join in on the fun and get in on all the global pre-registration milestone rewards. It's already reached 30 million. You do not want to be the only one to miss out. Thank you so much to Hoyoverse for sponsoring today's video. I'm really glad I had an excuse to draw these characters. I've learned so much while making this. Let's get back to those final illustrations. Rather than talking about each piece individually, I'm going to roll the time-lapse footage for all of them and talk about why I make the stylistic choices that I do while drawing. And almost all of it's going to come down to because it's faster or because it's more fun. For starters, I've been trying to include more of the character's clothing when I start sketching. You hear a lot of advice to draw the whole body before adding clothes to make sure you get the anatomy right, and this is good advice and I'm glad I did this for so long. But anatomy isn't as big of an issue for me anymore, so when I start my planning with the whole outfit in mind, it's easier for me to pick poses that complement the outfit better. I try to stay zoomed out as much as possible through the whole process, but especially in the earliest phases like sketching and line art, because I think it's more efficient to build a solid foundation first and save the detail work for last. The majority of people aren't going to be zooming in on your art to look at the details. They probably won't even look for more than a couple seconds. So if I can't see it very well from the full view of the piece, then I know the audience won't see it that well either, and I don't have to worry about making it perfect. This saves time by forcing me to make more active choices about my priorities, and it's easier to catch mistakes like proportions and, other things. Here, let's play a fun game. I was pulling an all-nighter while working on one of these pieces, so, not thinking super clearly. And I zoomed in to draw the face, and decided to try a different expression for variety's sake. Looked perfectly normal when it was just the face. Then I zoomed out and screamed in horror as I realized that the face mixed with the pose made it look like they were taking a massive shit. Scavenger hunt, post the timestamp in the comments when you find it. You have my blessing to make fun of me. God, a heart attack. Anyway, I've come to a preference for killing off pen pressure in my drawings. I use the default Clip Studio Milli pen almost exclusively. I like how it looks and it saves time because I don't have to worry about the consistency of my pen pressure throughout all of my line art. Instead, I focus on making my lines very deliberate. I'll try to capture as much detail as I can in a single line, and during my line art, I try my best to make my first lines the final ones. Minimal undoing, trying to act like I'm using a real pen on real paper. I'll also sometimes use parts of my sketch as the line art if I think it looks interesting enough as is. I enjoy the grit that it adds. I really value the small imperfections in art that remind you a person did this. Like with the Chainsaw Man manga, a lot of people got upset over Fujimoto's messier style, and I don't get that. I watched the anime, I liked the anime, but it's almost too clean for me after I had fallen in love with how messy and scratchy Fujimoto's work is in the manga. It's got a lot of personality to it, you can see the obvious efforts of his hard work, and it complements the setting of the story really well. Don't get me wrong, the anime is gorgeous, and the team that crunched so hard to make it are all incredibly talented people. It makes sense that a whole team of people have more time to clean and refine their contributions to a team project like a season of anime than a single person has while drawing an entire comic on their own. It all just comes down to preference, and I like evidence of the individual behind the work, so you have to look at the evidence of mine. I like implementing a lot of cheats in my art now. I used to feel a lot more obligated to try and draw something accurately, to the point that drawing got really not fun. But now if accuracy isn't cutting it for me, I'll go for interesting. Cheating can be anything, but for some specific examples, collapsing certain details together, especially ones that are small and far away, can be a time save that gives me more control over where I'm guiding the viewer's eyes. Sometimes that means that Yoimiya's hands are kind of a vague, blobby outline, while my Miku Miku beam has true hand rights. Yoimiya's hands weren't a focal point of the piece, Miku's were. Another example is drawing something wrong on purpose. In this pose where Lycone has his leg hoisted up in the air and one arm politely behind his back while the other acts as a counterbalance, I tried doing this pose myself to check if his center of balance was right, and at least for me personally, it felt a lot more natural for my arms to be swapped. When I tried swapping Lycone's arms though, it turns out at this angle you wouldn't really be able to see either of them. I really like this angle though, I want to keep it. So if his right arm is going to be obscured by his leg anyway, then I might as well keep that one behind his back and leave his left arm as his counterbalance because it looks cooler. It's easier to understand what he's doing when at least one of his arms is clearly visible. Cheating for me can also mean leaving things unfinished. I have a tendency to jump back and forth between line art and coloring whenever I'm getting bored of drawing lines, and I'll do this until I decide that I'm no longer willing to work on it. In a lot of cases, including these illustrations I'm doing now, that means their outfits are probably left incomplete, but in a state I'm very happy with regardless. But then there's pieces like this drawing of my character Cynthia, where I just didn't bother to draw her hand. I like how the rest of it looks, so I posted it and moved on. I'm just not interested in forcing myself to keep adding details if I've already had my fun with that drawing. Especially because I don't work for other people. I work for myself, so I have the freedom to make calls like that. Doing things like this that prioritize me and how I'm feeling has been a huge part of how drawing has started to feel fun for me again, and I've improved rapidly ever since. My cheats aren't always for utility though. For example, I am not beyond making someone's shins or ankles extra curvy just because I like how it looks. Certainly not everyone agrees with me. I've gotten comments of people making fun of stuff like that sometimes, which is also fine. Different strokes for different folks. I really enjoy drawing like this though, so I will neither apologize nor stop. I know saying don't care about what other people think is so much easier said than done, but I think that's my biggest recommendation to anyone listening. If you are truly happy with what and how you draw, and you understand that most of the world has very different preferences from you and from each other, then potshots from internet strangers will have much less of a hold on you. Anyway, getting back to it. There are times I still let myself focus on tiny details. I'm not saying that you should only ever focus on the bigger picture, that the broad strokes are paramount or anything like that. What I am saying is that by letting the emphasis on tiny details be more sparse, they become more special, more standout. I like to vary the way I draw shines on people's eyes. I feel like it's very expressive, but that detail is so tiny that if the entire picture were like that, you probably wouldn't notice unless you were taking to my art with a fine-toothed comb. Like ᵗᵱ, I gave these elongated ovals because it looks a little more animalistic to me. ᵗᵱ's got this handful of little eye shines because I thought it suited the firecracker look that I was going for with her eyelashes. Ben didn't get eye shines because it makes him look a little more distant, maybe even more intimidating, which adds to the disparity between his appearance and personality. And for ᵗᵱ, I gave her just a little shine at the bottom of her eyes. I feel like this helps making her eyes look more heavy and hooded and tired. I want the details to speak for themselves, and since I try not to be married to any one aspect of my art style, it gives me a lot of freedom to play with what I want to convey in a drawing. I don't mind drawing ᵗᵱ and ᵗᵱ's hair highlights differently to play to character even if it looks inconsistent, and I don't mind everyone's eyes being visible through their hair except for ᵗᵱ's because it makes her look more deliberately closed off. It's funny for me to look back on older art knowing how hard I was trying to do things the correct way and feeling so stagnated for so long, when allowing myself to draw in whatever way I enjoyed doing it just vaporized those floodgates. Drawing is like this rapid discovery process now. I've developed a more curious and experimental attitude, so I want to draw everything I see that looks even a little interesting until I understand it. And even my mistakes feel rewarding because I know that's just part of the process. A process that I love. I haven't been this happy with my art since I was a delusional middle schooler who thought I was hot shit because I could copy Tokyo Mew Mew manga panels. Don't do it, baby June, you shouldn't be learning to draw hands like that! I was having dinner with my mom a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned casually that if the child version of me could see what my art looks like right now, they'd freak out because I feel like I'm finally at the level I've always dreamed of being at. And she got really emotional and came to give me a hug. I didn't think it was that serious, but I mean, yeah, it kinda is. It feels incredible to be able to take this much pride in stuff I make, and there's still so much left. I am never going to be out of things that I can learn to draw for the first time, or learn to draw better, or learn to draw in a completely different way. That's a joy that I'm going to be able to keep with me, probably forever. So here are all my finished pieces. Like I said, I love how these came out. Damn, I drew those. Honestly, I wanted to do more than just what's here, but I literally ran out of time, so here's what I got. Give them all kisses on their foreheads before I put them to bed and move on with the next video project. And if you'd like to support those future projects, you can always check out my Patreon. I post works in progress and previews for my upcoming videos there for $2 a month. $5 gets you access to my twice-monthly Patreon exclusive live streams where sometimes I'm playing games with my team, sometimes I'm working on art for future videos, and sometimes I'm giving personalized art critiques. And $10 a month gets your name at the end of my videos just like this. I wrote them all in my sketchbook again since we visited her twice. My patrons make all of this possible and I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you're having a great day and I'll see you later. Bye!